Ever wondered about the woman who stood beside Prophet Muhammad? Khadija was a successful businesswoman and one of the first to believe in the Prophet's message. She supported him with strength, wisdom, and love, proving that behind every great change, there's often a remarkable woman. Khadija's legacy inspires us to lead with courage and kindness. Model for Muslim women who was Khadija, R.A. Her name was Khadija, R.A. She was honored with the title of Tahira, meaning pure. Her family name was Hind. Her genealogical chain is Khadija bint Khuwaylid bin Asad bin Abdul Uzza bin Qusay. It is at Qusay that her genealogical chain meets that of the Holy Prophet, S.A. Birth Khadija, R.A., was born in Makkah in 556 A.D., about 15 years before the year of the elephant, ul-Fil. Early life. Although chronological records do not provide us with much detail regarding her childhood years, it is historically proven that her mother was Fatima bint Zayeda, while her father, a prominent member of the Quraysh tribe, was Khuwaylid bin Asad. Banu Asad, the tribe to which Khadija, R.A., belonged, had been entrusted with the administration of Darun Nadwa. During those times, Darun Nadwa performed the role of a modern-day parliament house, functioning as a platform for consultation and decision-making where an exchange of ideas regarding crucial matters would take place. In addition to managing the affairs of Darun Nadwa, the tribe of Banu Asad was also actively involved in providing care and aid for the poor and the underprivileged. Khadija's father, Khuwaylid, was a man of sound character. His polished personality and empathetic disposition entitled him to praiseworthy recognition. He had allocated an area near his house in order to exclusively cater to the needs of the travelers and the needy. It can be said that Khuwaylid was in a league of his own. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he was uninterested in and even frustrated with the popular and celebrated pastimes of that age, which revolved around gambling, drinking, and womanizing. It was when Khuwaylid settled in Makkah that he married Fatima bint Zayeda. Although they had 5 children together, it is exclusively due to the high position and status awarded to their daughter Khadija, R.A., in history, that immortalized their names for centuries to come. During the Age of Ignorance, Jahiliyyah, Khuwaylid was among the top military commanders of the Arabs. According to some sources, he passed away before the Battle of Fujar, whereas other sources suggest that he took part in the Battle of Fujar and died during it. Khadija's childhood was spent in comfort and opulence. Her father was a trader by profession, and money was not an issue in the household. Contrary to the norms of that time, there was no unfair treatment with the female children of the house, which was the result of noble values of the family. Both Khadija, R.A., and her sister Hala, R.A., possessed great morals and virtues. Khadija's civilized mannerism, intellect, wisdom, morality, and self-respecting attitude were a clear reflection of her upbringing and the atmosphere at her house. It is also worth noting that idol worship was not popular at home. In fact, it is said that Khadija's paternal uncle Nawfal bin Asad was amongst the strong opponents of idol worship. His son, Warqa bin Nawfal, had taken a step further by denouncing polytheism and accepting Christianity. Though Khuwaylid had not openly renounced the idolatry practices of that time, being closely around his brother's family ensured that he bore no inclination towards pantheism. When Khadija, R.A., came of age, she was married off to Abu Hala bin Zarara al-Tamimi. They had a son together whom they named Hind. He was brought up by the Prophet, S.A., and grew up to embrace Islam. He was martyred during the War of Jamal in 32 Hijri. After a few years of their marriage, Abu Hala passed away. Khadija's parents got her married again to a young Qurayshi Atiq bin Abid bin Abdullah Makhzumi. They had a daughter who was also named Hind. Her son Muhammad later acquired eminence as a renowned narrator of a hadith. People would call her Muhammad, or the mother of Muhammad. It so happened that Khadija's second husband also passed away soon after marriage. Khadija, who was now a widower at the age of 30, was left with the grave responsibility of raising her children and managing her husband's business, all on her own. During the next 10 years, Khadija, R.A., dedicatedly performed the roles of a mother and sole financial provider for her family. Although marriage proposals continued from well-known Qurayshi families, she consistently refused them. Meanwhile, with the passage of time, Khadija, R.A., got used to the highs and lows of trade and enterprise. In any case, she was not a novice in her profession, since both her father and husband had been in the trading business. Though she wouldn't accompany the caravans herself, she entrusted her merchandise with responsible, noble, and trustworthy people of the Quraysh who would sell in various markets on her behalf and share the profits with her. With Allah's blessing, her business prospered by leaps and bounds, so much so that her merchandise alone was said to be equal to the trade goods of all the trading caravans of the tribe put together. Start of the relationship between Muhammad, Saw, and Khadija, R.A. During the age of Jahiliyyah, there was no centrally established authority governing the Arabs. This was why different tribes had established monopoly in different regions. The Arabs were a quarrelsome nation, and the ongoing skirmishes and frays between their tribes rendered travel routes unsafe. Moreover, there was always a threat of attack from caravan looters and burglars. However, it is interesting to note that these very routes were used comfortably by the Quraysh. The custodianship of the Kaaba had elevated their status among the tribes. So esteemed was their position that no one dared to even think of harming their wealth and lives. The uncle of our dear Prophet, Saw, Abu Talib, was also a trader. In his youth, the Prophet, Saw, accompanied him during trade journeys to Syria and Yemen. This provided him with valuable business experience and knowledge of other countries. Even in his prime, Muhammad, Saw, was known for his serious and mature nature, truthfulness, nobility, integrity, and honesty. So much so that he was titled Amin, trustworthy, and Sadiq, truthful, by all and sundry. It is interesting to note that even before being bestowed with prophethood, Muhammad, Saw, appears to have no match in terms of his character and morals. He was concerned for the well-being of relatives and strangers alike. In particular, he was eager to help his uncle feed his large family during times of financial difficulty. It so happened that Allah created the circumstances whereby the Prophet, Saw, could support his aged uncle. One day, when the Prophet, Saw, went to meet Abu Talib, he made a mention of Khadija, R.A., and said, "My dear nephew, you know of my difficult circumstances. Why don't you meet Khadija bint Khuwaylid? She sends people with her trade caravans. They trade her goods and keep some of the profits. Being aware of your trustworthiness, she would definitely give you preference over others." According to the tradition of Tabqat ibn Sa'd, Khadija, R.A., was herself in need of someone reliable and hardworking whom she could trust her business affairs with. When she heard of Muhammad, Saw, she herself sent word for him. She offered to give double the profit she gave to others if Muhammad, Saw, accompanied her caravan to Syria and traded goods for her. When the Prophet, Saw, gave this news to his uncle, he expressed his happiness and said, "This is provision sent your way by Allah the Almighty." Prophet Muhammad saw a trade journey to Syria. Khadija, R.A., sent her slave Misra to accompany Muhammad, Saw, so as to help him during the journey. Not only was Misra impressed by the good morals and polished character of the Prophet, Saw, he also witnessed some unusually intriguing events during the course of the journey. When they reached Busra, the Prophet, Saw, rested himself under the shade of a tree. This tree was located near a huge chapel which itself stood on elevated ground. The priest of this chapel, a hermit by the name Nastura, was well versed with the teachings of the Torah and the Bible. As he came out and glanced down at the caravan, his eyes fell on Muhammad, Saw. The sight of him lying under the tree left him bewildered, as according to his knowledge, only a prophet would take shade under that tree. Highly intrigued by what he saw, Nastura rushed down inquiring about Muhammad, Saw, on his way. When he reached Misra, he was informed that Muhammad, Saw, was one of the Qurayshites from the Haram. He then met with Muhammad, Saw, and initiated a conversation. Nastura would ask the Prophet, Saw, to swear by Lat and Uzza, popular idols, but he would consistently refrain from doing so. Moreover, Nastura would open his book and repeatedly fix his gaze on the Prophet's face while going over the scripture. It did not take long before the priest's suspicions were confirmed and he started shouting out, "This is the very person whom Jesus had given tidings of." Witnessing the erratic state of the priest, the Quraysh feared that Muhammad, Saw, could be harmed. The sense of this threat led them to draw out their swords. Seeing this, Nastura decided to run away. While hastily retreating, he shouted out, "O people of the caravan, you feared me while I bore nothing but respect for you. According to our scriptures, this man of yours will be a prophet of God. Whosoever follows him will succeed, while those who don't will perish." After this noteworthy occurrence, Misra developed an even greater level of interest in the personality of Muhammad, Saw. He observed that when the merchandise-laden camels would slow down out of exhaustion, one hand stroke by the Prophet, Saw, would re-energize them almost instantly. Misra also noted how a cloud would be above the Prophet, Saw, providing him shade during times of soaring desert temperatures. Besides these instances, what really won Misra over and convinced him of the extraordinary personality of Muhammad was his formidable integrity and honest disposition. To top it all off, Allah blessed the caravan with a huge profit, such that had never been made before. Upon his return to Makkah, the Prophet gave Khadija, R.A., a thorough report regarding the expedition. He handed over all the profit with utmost honesty. When Misra gave Khadija, R.A., an account of the Prophet's laudable qualities and extraordinary events that had taken place, she was profoundly impressed. Muhammad's captivating personality won her heart. Until now, Khadija, R.A., had turned down marriage proposals from various wealthy and cultured families. It appears as though she had decided not to marry again, but she was so touched by the Prophet's mannerisms that she now wished to send him a marriage proposal herself. During those times, widowed women had complete authority to independently deal with matters regarding their marriage. Khadija, R.A., confided in her friend Nafisa and gave her the task of getting in touch with Muhammad, S.A., to know his opinion regarding the matter. As planned, Nafisa approached the Prophet, and inquired as to why he had not married as yet. He was in his mid-20s. He responded that lack of wealth had prevented him from doing so. Nafisa asked him if he would accept a marriage request from a wealthy woman. The Prophet inquired as to who she was and was told that she was none other than Khadija. What followed was a consultation between the Prophet, and his paternal uncles. Khadija's family was no stranger in the Prophet's household. In fact, the Prophet's paternal aunt Safiya had been married to Khadija's brother Awam bin Khuwaylid. Khadija, R.A., herself was a known personality among the Quraysh owing to her high financial status and honorable position in the society. Therefore, everyone expressed their consent for this proposal. According to the narration of Tabqat ibn Sa'ad, the acceptance was sent to Khadija's uncle Amr bin Asad, who had taken the guardianship of Khadija, R.A., after her father's demise. The marriage with Muhammad, true appreciation of human qualities. On the day of their marriage, the Prophet's uncle Abu Talib, along with his brothers and other close relatives, arrived at Amr bin Asad's residence. Abu Talib delivered the marriage sermon in which he especially mentioned some exceptional qualities of Muhammad, An excerpt from Tariq-e-Yaqubi provides us with some details. After praising Allah, I want to point out that Muhammad bin Abdullah is my nephew in blood. He possesses some laudable attributes, so much so that not one man from the Quraysh can match him. It is true that he lacks wealth, but wealth is not comparable with soundness of character and other human qualities. After this, he spoke about the bond that was to be formed between the two families. In response, Khadija's cousin Warqa bin Nawfal gave a sermon. Amr bin Asad then endorsed the nikah and formally announced the completion of the ceremony. According to the narration of Sirah ibn Hisham, the bridal gift of 500 dirhams was agreed upon. According to another tradition, a bridal gift of 20 camels was finalized, and the Prophet's uncle took the responsibility for it. At the time of marriage, Muhammad, was 25 years old, while Khadija, R.A., was 40. The important thing about this marriage is the fact that the Prophet, did not think much of Khadija's age and her status as a widow whilst considering the proposal. On the other hand, Khadija, R.A., also did not bring the Prophet's relatively poor financial standing into consideration. Both had a higher and deeper purpose in mind, resulting in a marriage that would become an example for generations to come. While the Prophet's nature and disposition were of the highest standard, Khadija's appreciation of these qualities was truly commendable. She was herself blessed with innumerable praiseworthy traits, and that's why she was known by the title Tahira, meaning pure. Now that she was married to the best of men, Muhammad, her status was elevated to such high levels that no other woman in human history can claim to match it. While it is perhaps a matter of divine choice, it is equally important to realize that Khadija's character, her honesty, and value for righteousness made her markedly deserving of this honorable position. A blessed marital life, the union of holy souls. Through many biographical sources, we find that despite having differences in age and wealth, the Prophet, and his wife Khadija, R.A., led a really happy and contented marital life. Amazingly, the two found no difficulties or constraints in adjusting together. On the one hand, there was the Prophet's extraordinary character, which was enough to leave a lifelong impression on anyone who met him even once. On the other hand, there was immense love, respect, and obedience that Khadija, R.A., had for the Prophet, SAW. This guaranteed a happy and peaceful married life. Khadija, R.A., had already been blessed with honor, wealth, and children, but the Prophet's company proved to be an unmatched treasure that gave a completely new meaning and vision to her life. After marriage, the Prophet, SAW, shifted to Khadija's home. It was here that her children from previous marriages, Hind bint Atiq and Hind bin Abi Hala, also resided. Soon Allah SWT blessed the Prophet, SAW, and Khadija, R.A., with a son whom they named Qasim. Sadly, Qasim passed away in his infancy. Afterwards, the births of their daughters Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulsum, and Fatima followed. They also had another son, Abdullah, whose title was Tahir. He too passed away at a very early age. Not only did Khadija, R.A., patiently endure the death of her sons, but also persevered in her daughter's upbringing. The household of Muhammad, SAW, and Khadija, R.A., now consisted of their 4 daughters, Khadija's 2 children from her former marriages, and 2 boys, Ali ibn Abi Talib and Zayd bin Harisa. Seeing the difficult financial situation of his uncle Abu Talib, the Prophet, SAW, had taken up the responsibility of his cousin Ali, R.A. Zayd bin Harisa, R.A., on the other hand, was a slave boy who had been presented to Khadija, R.A., by her nephew Hakim bin Hazam. Zayd bin Harisa belonged to a family of noble status and sound background, which is why his mannerisms and habits reflected polished breeding. Owing to some unfortunate incident, he was taken as a slave, which was common in those times. The Prophet, SAW, was particularly fond of him. Seeing this, Khadija, R.A., had presented Zayd, R.A., to her husband. Interestingly, the behavior and attitude of everyone in the household toward Zayd, R.A., was so kind and loving that he refused to go back to his family when they came to take him. After her marriage, Khadija, R.A., proffered all her wealth to the Prophet, SAW, to be utilized by him in any way he considered appropriate. The Prophet's gentle disposition and kind heart was not only meant for his own family, but extended to everyone he knew. He would support the destitute, the poor, and the grief-stricken. He would take care of the needs of widows, orphans, and the marginalized groups of the society. In all these matters, Khadija, R.A., wholeheartedly backed and supported the Prophet, SAW. Her wealth was now his. In fact, her encouraging attitude and cooperative demeanor only fomented the Prophet, SAW, to take his philanthropic work even further. The time before prophethood and the role of Khadija, R.A. 3 major areas of the Prophet's life were prominent after his marriage and before the advent of prophethood. He was an exemplary head of the family and an active patron of the weak and the poor. The third aspect of his personality that we note is the inner struggle he was going through against the idol practices of his time and the silent search for the truth. As mentioned earlier, from a tender age the Prophet, SAW, felt displeased and weary of idol worshipping. When he would take the sheep out to graze in the vast open desert, he would ponder over what is the truth if idol worshipping is wrong. The Prophet's thirst for the truth only increased with time. This profound fixation pertaining to life's real purpose and the yearning regarding the reality of the universe led him to prefer solitude and meditation. He would go out of the city towards the nearby mountains where he would spend solitary hours immersed in deep thought. Khadija, R.A., would ensure to pack enough food and drink for the Prophet, SAW, to last while he was away from home. This continued for almost 3 years. These lengthy odysseys were only possible because Khadija, R.A., was taking complete care of household matters. The Prophet, SAW, was at peace inside his home. At that time, their eldest daughter Zainab, R.A., had been married to Khadija's nephew Abul As, and she was happy in her marital life. Abu Lahab, the Prophet's uncle, had asked for Ruqayya, R.A., and Kulsum, R.A., to marry them with his sons Utbah and Utaiba. Their nikah had been performed while the consummation was yet to take place. The 4th daughter, Fatima, R.A., was very young at this time. The advent of prophethood was not an instantaneous event. In fact, there were many preceding occurrences that would gradually lead up to the first revelation. When the Prophet, SAW, was about to turn 40, he started having dreams in regular succession, which would become reality in everyday life. We also find from historical sources that he would hear surreal voices and sounds during that time. When he would mention about these peculiar supernatural occurrences to Khadija, R.A., she would comfort him and offer moral support. She would calm him by saying, "Do not worry. Allah, SWT will protect you from every harm. It can be inferred that after closely examining the Prophet's exemplary character, Khadija, R.A., was convinced that her husband was someone special who had been chosen to travail in fulfilling some special purpose by the Almighty. She seemed to have a firm belief that divine help will be with her husband at every step of the way. If this were not so, she would have discouraged the Prophet, from going into solitude and would term the surreal voices and dreams as the handiwork of the jinns, a logical explanation as per the common beliefs of the time. To the contrary, we find that she did not stop the Prophet, from pursuing his interests. Rather, she encouraged him to continue spending time in thoughtful retreat and meditation. The advent of prophethood and Khadijah's moral support. At last the time arrived when the mighty word of Allah was to be revealed and the Prophet's divine mission was to commence. This also meant that the tremendous burden of guiding the entire human race was to fall on the Prophet's shoulders. According to the tradition in Sahih Bukhari, it was the month of Ramadan, and as usual Muhammad was meditating in the cave of Hira. Suddenly the angel Jibreel appeared and said, "O Muhammad, read." To this the Prophet replied, "I cannot read." Jibreel embraced the Prophet tightly by his chest and commanded him yet again to read. This happened thrice, after which the Prophet finally repeated the first 5 verses of Surah Al-Alaq after the angel. Jibreel then disappeared, leaving the Prophet in fear and confusion about what to make out of this highly unusual incident. The Prophet set out for home while his whole body was shaking with fear, and he felt feverish. Upon reaching home, he immediately called Khadija, R.A., and asked to cover him up. The Prophet narrated the entire event to Khadija, R.A., and said that he feared for his life. She listened to him patiently and then stated with utmost confidence and conviction, "This cannot be. I swear Allah will never let you down. You are compassionate and helpful towards all. You give charity to the poor, you honor the guest, and support people in times of need." These words from his wife consoled the Prophet. It is important to note that Khadija, R.A., had not only believed her husband about the extraordinary incident, but had also shown complete faith regarding his personality and character. In addition to this, she had expressed her conviction and trust in the Almighty, that He appreciates and values good deeds. The Prophet needed this conviction, as this was the time when he was himself uncertain about what was happening to him. Khadijah's reassurances brought back his confidence upon himself, and the shakiness gave way to peace and tranquility. Khadija, R.A., and the testimony of prophethood. After the incident of the first revelation, Khadija, R.A., thought of visiting her cousin Warqa bin Nawfal. He had converted to Christianity and was writing the Bible in Hebrew at that time. Both Muhammad, and Khadija, R.A., visited Warqa and narrated the incident to him. According to the tradition of Bukhari, Warqa was quick to exclaim that the angel described was the same angel who had previously visited Moses, A.S. He said, "Remember, you will be denied and persecuted. I wish that I were young and that I should be present at the time when your people will drive you out." The Prophet, astonishingly asked, "Will these people drive me out?" Warqa replied, "Yes. Whoever brought a message like yours had to face opposition and undergo great hardship. If I live to see that day, I will certainly stand by your side and support you in every way." Not much time had passed after this conversation that Warqa bin Nawfal passed away. The Prophet, and Khadija, R.A., had now realized the burden of this divine responsibility. Although Khadija, R.A., was happy, it was deep concern for her husband that now occupied her mind. According to a tradition, after the experience of the first revelation, the Prophet faced Jibreel, yet again. When he was coming out of the cave of Hira, he suddenly heard a voice calling out from above, "O Muhammad, you are the messenger of Allah, and I am Jibreel." As the Prophet lifted his head, he saw the angel Jibreel in his original majestic form dominating the horizon with 600 wings. Awed by this glorious sight, the Prophet immediately set out towards his home. It so happened that Khadija, R.A., had already sent someone out to deliver food to the Prophet. When the cave was found vacant, she sent some more people out in search of him. They too came back unsuccessful. Upon seeing the Prophet, finally reach home in this worrisome state, Khadija, R.A., inquired, "Abul Qasim, where were you? I sent out people in your search, but you were nowhere to be found." The Prophet, then related the entire incident. When he quoted Jibreel as saying, "O Muhammad, "You are the messenger of Allah." Khadija, R.A., responded, "Congratulations to you. Believe me, by the one in whose hand my life is, I always hoped that you would be the messenger for this nation." Khadija, R.A., had several reasons for her conviction that her husband had in fact been chosen by the Almighty for a grand cause. In addition to Maysra's testimony, it was the exemplary character of the Prophet, S.A., that she experienced herself as a wife, which strengthened her belief in him. A rather intriguing event narrated by Ibn Ishaq helps to shed more light on the matter. Many years before Khadija's marriage to the Prophet, S.A., it so happened that a group of Qurayshi women gathered around the idol of Habal on a festive occasion. Many small idols were also placed around the big idol. Among the Qurayshi women was Khadija, R.A. While the festivity was going on, a Jewish man crossed their path and looked intently at the women folk. He then said, "Soon a prophet will emerge from your people, so whoever amongst you gets a chance to be his wife, do so." At first, the women stared back at him in bewilderment. However, the stares soon changed into a shower of stones as they realized that the man was a Jew and bore no special reverence for their idols. Khadija, R.A., was the only one who neither cursed nor physically retaliated in defense of the idols. If this narration is true, the statement of the Jewish man may have left an imprint on Khadija's mind, mentally preparing her for some supernatural occurrence. This explains why Khadija, R.A., expressed no shock or doubt upon hearing about the divine revelation. It is important to understand, however, that her conviction was not merely based on some supernatural occurrence. Rather, it was the commendable and meritorious character of her husband, with whom she had spent 15 years of marriage, that had affirmed her faith in him as a prophet of Allah. Khadija, R.A., accepted Islam and started adopting its ways in her daily life. The way of performing the daily prayers, salah, and doing ablution, wudu, were taught by Jibreel to the Prophet, Sa, who then educated Khadija, R.A., regarding the matter. When the Prophet, Sa, would pray, Khadija, R.A., would diligently follow. At a time when the whole world was immersed in heedlessness and deceitful pleasures, this blessed couple would spend their nights in devout prostration before their Lord. Ali, R.A., noticed the recent changes in the household practices and inquired the Prophet, Sa, about them. The Prophet, Sa, informed him about his prophethood and invited him to Islam. Ali, R.A., who was still a young boy, responded that it was something he had never heard before, and he wanted to consult his father before making a decision. Soon, though, Allah opened up his chest for Islam, and he embraced the religion. In this way, Allah, SWT, made the household conditions appeasing and comfortable for the Prophet, Sa. What would have been more uplifting for him than to see his wife and children readily accepting and following the way of Allah? In addition, the other two members of the house, that is Ali, R.A., and Zayd bin Harisa, R.A., also accepted Islam from the beginning. In its early days, the practices and teachings of this newly blossoming faith were propagated in a rather discreet manner. A few close companions of the Prophet, Sa, accepted Islam, but it could not remain a secret for long. Soon the Quraysh came to know about it. An interesting description of Islam's early days is given in the words of Afif Kindi. "I once arrived in Makkah for Hajj. Since I was also a trader, I went to Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib in order to purchase some merchandise. He was a friend of mine. Usually he would purchase perfume from Yemen and then sell it in Makkah. While I was seated by my friend, a young man came and looked observantly at the sun. When the sun set a little towards the west, the man scrupulously performed ablution and then stood up for prayer. A little while later, an adolescent boy came, performed ablution, and started praying beside the man. In the same manner, a woman also arrived, performed ablution, and stood praying behind the man. I said to Abbas, 'Woe to you, O Abbas! What practice is this?' Abbas, R.A., replied, 'This is the religion of my nephew, Muhammad bin Abdullah. The young man Ali, R.A., is also a nephew of mine. The woman you see is Khadija, R.A., the wife of Muhammad, Sa. They both have accepted and adopted his religion.' In another narration, the wordings are, 'None except these two have accepted his prophethood.' Later on, we find that Afif Kindi also embraced Islam. While reflecting back on the incident described above, he would often express his regret on not being the fourth Muslim among the people praying behind the Prophet, Sa. The episode portrayed above is of a time when Islam was in its fairly initial stages. Only the members of the Prophet's household had embraced Islam during that period. Khadija's courage and support during the reign of persecution. The prediction by the far-sighted Warqa bin Nawfal proved to be true. As soon as the news of this new religion reached the ears of the Quraysh, they started pursuing the Prophet regarding his mission. The same Quraysh who until now would hold Muhammad in high regard started to cast a doubtful eye on him. The most worrying aspect for them was the fact that not only was the Prophet practicing this new religion himself, but also inviting others towards it. This invitation was accepted by a few, and these were no ordinary people. Some of the most esteemed and well-to-do people were among the converts, for example Abu Bakr. Since the leaders of the Quraysh could not openly derange the wealthy and the powerful, they decided to take their abomination out on the weak and destitute believers. Despite all the trials and tribulations that the believers were being put through, the religion of Islam continued to spread and grow among the Makkans. It was obvious that circumstances had become stringent for the Prophet, while Khadija, stood by him every step of the way. The Quraysh now started showering the Prophet, with taunts and insolent remarks. It was habitual for them to call Muhammad, a madman, a sorcerer, and a poet. Some would even go as far to say that the word of Allah, had been fabricated by the Prophet himself. It is important to understand that Khadija, was the daughter of a highly regarded man from the tribe of Quraysh. At the same time, she had wed the man renowned for his dignity and trustworthiness. All her life, she was viewed as someone highly deserving of respect. Now, in her old age, she was having to witness insulting remarks being passed on her husband openly in the marketplace. Surely it would have been a painful experience to endure, but she persisted in believing what she thought was true and kept up the much-needed support and loyalty for her husband. The Prophet's uncle Abu Lahab and his wife Jamil had their residence in the Prophet's neighborhood. The two started directing physical abuse in addition to verbal torments towards the Prophet, and his family. Litter and trash were thrown into the Prophet's home, while at other times thorny stems and bushes were laid out in the Prophet's path. Jamil was known for her sharp tongue and would often foul-mouth the Prophet and his family. One can imagine the patience Khadija, would have shown during these trying times, keeping in mind that she was in no way inferior to these people. The Prophet, had standing instructions to all Muslims not to indulge in unnecessary arguments with the non-believers and continue with their efforts. Safi-ur-Rahman Mubarakpuri writes in his book Ar-Rahiq ul-Maktoum, the group of people involved in troubling the Prophet, within his home, includes Abu Lahab, Hakam bin Abi al-As, Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, Adi bin Hamrai, Ibn ul-Asad Hazli. All these people were the Prophet's neighbors, and none embraced Islam except Hakam bin Abi al-As. They would bedevil and pester the Prophet, by throwing a goat's uterus upon him while he prayed, such that it would fall right on him. Sometimes they would target the cooking vessels containing food for the day. Tired of these acts, and in order to be able to pray in peace, the Prophet, built a small shack for himself. This was the situation inside the household of the Prophet, which was shared by all the members of the family. The afflictions that awaited the Prophet outside his house were the ones that he had to endure all on his own. One can only try to imagine what his children and beloved wife would have felt upon seeing the Prophet, return home in a painful, grief-stricken state. After all, stones were pelted at him, trash and decaying bones were flung, and some would spit on him as they crossed his path. In fact, the animosity he had to deal with was so intense that his own uncle Abu Lahab is said to have rushed out in excitement upon the death of the Prophet's son Abdullah, claiming that Muhammad, had finally been broken off the root, with no son to carry his name forward. When the Prophet, would return home after these heart-wrenching incidents, Khadija, would try her utmost to soothe him and lift his morale. It has often been seen that even good people are pushed to compromise their values and principles when the happiness of their children is at stake. However, in the case of Khadija, nothing could cause her to waver from the path of Allah. Before the advent of prophethood, Ruqayya and Kulsum had been engaged to the sons of Abu Lahab Utbah and Utaybah. The nikah had also been done, but the consummation was yet to be carried out. Now that the Prophet, was inviting people to Islam and away from idol worship, Abu Lahab decided to get back at his nephew by ordering his sons to divorce both Ruqayya and Kulsum. The sons obeyed their father and divorced the Prophet's daughters. It was evident that trials and difficulties were on the rise for Khadija, In addition to all the other hardships, the fate of her daughters was now in question. Who would take their hands in marriage when their own uncle had refused to accept them? However, it appears that her trust in Allah was supreme, that He will not leave His faithful slaves alone. And indeed, her conviction was proven right. Ruqayya, R.A., got married to Usman, R.A., who was well known among the Quraysh for his altruistic disposition, nobility, wealth, and admirable character. Most importantly, he was amongst the few who had accepted Islam during its initial days. Both Ruqayya and Usman were part of the group of believers that migrated to Abyssinia, present-day Eritrea and the northern half of Ethiopia, in order to flee the persecution. As the numerical strength of the Muslims rose, so did the ruthless afflictions of the Quraysh. They had realized that despite all their efforts, the matter was getting out of hands for them. Unless a decisive step was taken, it would become impossible to curb the growth of the new religion. The one thing that stood as a barrier for the Quraysh was the presence of Abu Talib. While he hadn't accepted Islam himself, he had pledged complete support and protection for his nephew. Since Abu Talib was the head of the Banu Hashim tribe, no one could dare to lay hands on the Prophet, And if someone did, it would most definitely lead to widespread killing and bloodshed in Makkah, because Banu Hashim would take revenge as per the practice of the tribal society there. Since physically eliminating the Prophet, was not possible politically, the leaders of the Quraysh decided to opt for the second best alternative, that is, a social and economic boycott. They agreed among themselves that the tribes of Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib would be completely boycotted by the whole of Makkah. No one would be permitted to marry, trade goods, or even socialize with them. This would be the stance of the Quraysh unless the people of these tribes denounced Muhammad, and gave away the Prophet to them. This decision was officially written and hung on the door of the Kaaba. This ostracism was extremely daunting for Abu Talib and his people. In these miserable circumstances, he had no choice but to bring the tribe of Banu Hashim towards a valley near the cave of Hira, where they would settle temporarily. This valley later came to be known as Shaib Abi Talib. It was in this valley that Khadija, R.A., too, remained confined with her daughters during the period of the boycott. According to a narration in Zad al-Ma'ad, Muslims faced utmost misery during this period. The boycott resulted in starvation, whereby people went on days without food. Khadija, R.A., had to endure this hardship at the feeble age of over 60 years. She spent all her remaining wealth for the people of the tribe, providing food and necessities while she could. When all was spent, Khadija, R.A., who was brought up in the most affluent of households, was forced to live on boiled leaves for survival, together with the other Muslims. At times when even leaves wouldn't be available, the wailing of the hunger-stricken children would resonate from the valley. The youngest daughter of the Prophet, was amongst these children and was left pale with weakness as a result of extreme and frequent starvation. The test that the Almighty had put the Muslims in was formidable, but their faith was also unwavering. On the other hand, the Quraysh had crossed all limits of inhumanity in their hatred towards Muslims. At times, Khadija's relatives would secretly send food for those besieged in the valley. During one such occasion, Khadija's nephew Hakim bin Hizam sent his slave with some wheat grains for the Muslims. On his way towards the valley, he was caught by Abu Jahl, who tried to snatch the eatables away. In the midst of all this, Abu Bakhtari crossed their path. Though he was not a Muslim, he was kind at heart. Displeased with Abu Jahl's attitude, he asked him, "If a person wants to send some food for his aunt, what makes you stop him?" The conversation soon hurled up into a huge argument, and other people also joined in. Serious questions were raised regarding the nature of the boycott, while some even expressed concern and regret pertaining to the harshness with which it was imposed. Some even wished to end it altogether. The Prophet, informed his family and friends of this heartening development. The next day, when the matter arose in the conference of the Quraysh, it was seen that the official document had been eaten up by termites. The only piece of writing that remained on the document was the name of Almighty Allah, SWT. Therefore, the boycott was cancelled, and the Muslims were finally liberated from their affliction after 3 tiresome years. When Khadija, R.A., returned home, her health had deteriorated to a great degree. At an old age, she had been displaced from her home and had undergone extreme difficulty and starvation. All her wealth had been spent in the way of Allah, SWT. Despite her age and affluent background, Khadija, R.A., bore all the adversity with resilience and without complaint. It seems as though the mission of the Prophet SAW had become Khadijah's own mission. Now, after having given away everything in the way of Allah, Khadija, R.A., was ready to return to her Lord. Khadijah's death and the year of grief. After the boycott had ended, the Prophet returned to his mission with even more zeal and determination. At home, his wife was his faithful friend, while his uncle Abu Talib was an ardent supporter outside. However, the time was now up for both of them. Abu Talib was first to bid farewell to the world, while Khadija, R.A., passed away just 3 days later. It was the 10th year of prophethood. After spending 25 years in the service and companionship of the Prophet, Khadija, R.A., passed away in the month of Ramadan at the age of 65. Deeply saddened by the demise of his beloved wife, the Prophet, himself carried out the burial. Her grave is still present at a place called Hujun. Having been deprived of Khadija's loving companionship and Abu Talib's mighty support, the Prophet, found himself in utter sorrow. For him, Khadija, R.A., was not just an obedient wife, she was also a loyal and self-sacrificing life partner. Not only did she stand by his side and supported him during the roughest and darkest of times, she actively facilitated him in the work of prophethood. To top it all, Khadija, R.A., was a woman with extraordinary traits and an amazing character. The way she sacrificed her resources, her time, and her own self for the Prophet, and his mission is an example that will not find many parallels in human history. The departure of Khadija, R.A., had such a profound impact on the Prophet, that he named the year of her demise the year of grief. The entire Muslim Ummah has consensus over the faithfulness, wisdom, generosity, and devotion of Khadija, R.A. Non-Muslim historians and analysts have also made mention of her commendable traits and have showered their appreciation in most gracious words. Constance Giorgio writes about her in his book, "From the very day on which the Prophet, informed Khadija, R.A., of the beginning of his mission, she decided to expend her wealth and resources in the propagation and expansion of Islam. She dedicatedly continued to do so until her last days. The day she passed away, there was nothing even worth a date seed available at hand. 2 exemplary beings have lived amongst the Muslims who dispersed all they had in the way of Islam. They are Khadija, R.A., and Abu Bakr, R.A. Both were affluent before the advent of Islam, and when they died, they did not have even a penny left with them." Khadija's high stature. It was enough to prove the superior status of Khadija, R.A., that she was blessed to be the first wife of the Prophet, and the very first mother of the believers, ul-Mu'mineen. Besides this, the Prophet, also expressed his appreciation for her on various occasions, as we can read in Hadith and Sirah books. The Prophet, called Khadija, R.A., the best woman of the Ummah. It is reported by Ali, R.A., in Sahih Bukhari, that he said, "Maryam bint Imran was the best amongst women, of the Muslim Ummah of her time, while Khadija is of the highest standing amongst the women, of Ummat-e-Muhammad." In a tradition of Musnad Ahmed, we find that there are 4 women who are of the highest and most exalted rank in Jannah. These are 1. Asiya, the wife of the Pharaoh, 2. Maryam bint Imran, 3. Khadija bint Khuwaylid, and 4. Fatima bint Muhammad. Moreover, we find that Khadija, R.A., had been given the glad tiding of having acquired a place in Jannah during her life. Jibrail, once visited the Prophet, and said, "O Prophet of Allah, Khadija, R.A., is coming towards you with a container of food. Convey her salutation from her Lord and myself. Also give her the news of being granted a palace of pearls in Jannah, where there will be no disturbing noise, nor any type of discomfort." This hadith is mentioned in both Bukhari and Muslim. Even after the death of his beloved wife, the Prophet, would often make mention of her. Aisha, R.A., is reported to have said that she never felt as envious of any other wife of the Prophet, as she did of Khadija, R.A. This was the case even though Khadija, R.A., had passed away before her marriage to the Prophet, The reason behind this envy was the frequent mention of Khadija, R.A., by the Prophet, and the fact that whenever he would slaughter a goat, he would send a portion of the meat to Khadija's friends. Bukhari. In another narration of Bukhari, Aisha, R.A., states that once Khadija's sister Hala bint Khuwaylid came to visit the Prophet, and called out for permission to enter. Upon hearing her voice, the Prophet was taken by surprise and said, "O Allah, may it be Hala." This was because Hala's voice was very similar to that of her sisters. Aisha, R.A., who was a witness to this, became upset and lamented in these words. You reminisce over a Qurayshi woman who is long dead, and Allah has blessed you with a better wife than her. The Prophet's expression turned sour. Upon seeing his reaction, Aisha, R.A., instantly responded, I swear by Allah who has sent you with the truth that I will never again make mention of Khadija, R.A., unless it is in her praise. We find a similar incident in the tradition of Sahih Muslim, whereby the Prophet replied to Aisha, R.A., by saying, This is because love and adoration for Khadija, R.A., has been planted in my heart by Allah, SWT himself. Musnad Ahmed provides us more details regarding this incident. According to this tradition, Aisha, R.A., said, O Prophet of Allah, you keep making mention of the old Qurayshi lady whose ankles were skinny, whose teeth had fallen out and a long while has passed since her death, and Allah has even granted you a better substitute for her. To this the Prophet, replied, There is no comparison for a woman like Khadija. She testified for me in my prophethood whilst the whole world denied me. At a time when everyone deprived me, she shared her wealth with me, and Allah bestowed me with children through her and not through any other wife. Words are not enough to describe the good fortune of Khadija, R.A. Allah, SWT, was pleased with her and honored her with salutations along with the tidings of paradise. The Prophet, never tired of praising her in the most laudatory of ways, and she was made an ideal example and a role model for billions of Muslim women to follow till the end of the world. The Holy Prophet, was truly in love with Khadija, R.A. Even after her death, whenever anything was brought before his eyes that reminded him of Khadija, he was deeply moved. For instance, the Prophet's son-in-law Abu al-As, who had not yet embraced Islam, was captured in the Battle of Badr. His wife, the Prophet's daughter Zainab, R.A., sent an expensive necklace as compensation to set him free. This necklace was a gift from Khadija, R.A., that she had given to her daughter at the time of marriage. When the Prophet saw this necklace, he was overwhelmed with emotion. He requested his companions, If you deem it appropriate, set Zainab's prisoner free and return her ransom payment. The companions of the Prophet agreed to it. Abu al-As was released, and the necklace was also returned. Ibn Sa'd. In another instance, we find that once a woman with dark complexion visited the Prophet, The Prophet, welcomed her with a lot of warmth. After she had left, Aisha, R.A., asked the Prophet, regarding the hospitality shown towards this woman. He told her that the woman would often visit Khadija, R.A., during her life. This gives an indication how much the Prophet, loved Khadija, R.A. Khadija, R.A., an inspiration and a role model for all women. The Prophet, declared Khadija, R.A., as the best amongst all the women of his ummah. Her extraordinary character and non-controversial personality has received appreciation and envy from even non-Muslim authors. The author of Islamic marriage laws writes, The position held by Muhammad's first wife amongst women in Islam is one that can never be acquired by any other woman. This virtuous woman was really smart, intelligent, wise, and resourceful. Her intelligence and wisdom brought many a success for Islam and removed obstacles from the path of the messenger of Islam. She was a courageous woman and highly dedicated to her faith, who sacrificed everything in the cause of Islam. It would not be wrong to say that a woman with such loyalty, obedience, and self-sacrifice is not likely to ever be born again on the face of this earth. The Prophet, was so satisfied with the companionship provided by his wife that he did not marry another woman during the life of Khadija, R.A. Reflecting on her qualities, one may come to conclude that perhaps nature had particularly handpicked her for assisting and supporting the mighty work of prophethood. She was a pure soul by nature. Even during the period of ignorance, Jahiliyyah, Khadija, R.A., had no inclination towards idol worship. It is recorded in the tradition of Musnad Ahmed that before the advent of prophethood, Muhammad, once declared that he would never worship Lat and Uzza. Upon hearing this, Khadija, R.A., not only agreed with him, but also suggested that these idols may never even be mentioned again. This makes us understand why she was ready to believe in the Prophet, when he presented himself as Allah's messenger. She followed the divine revelation in its letter and spirit as it arrived. Hence, the first human being in the world who believed in the Quran and the Prophet, was this glorious woman who left everyone behind to attain this special status. Khadija, R.A., is the role model for Muslim women not just because she was a sincere and loyal wife and a good mother. Many women exhibit these qualities. She was unique because she had overcome to a great extent the weaknesses and negative traits commonly found amongst women. She was not superstitious, hasty, impatient, or prone to hopelessness. She would not use her tongue as a weapon to victimize or blame others. She was a selfless person. Beyond her own self and family, she had a concern for the humanity at large, and therefore fully understood the importance of the Prophet's mission. Khadijah's intellectual capabilities and wisdom outclassed those of the average man. When the angel Jibrail first descended with the word of Allah, SWT, Khadija, R.A., did not take her husband to any magician or soothsayer. Instead, she had correctly conceived that the matter was about divine work, and hence chose her cousin Warqa bin Nawfal, whose vast knowledge regarding sacred scriptures would offer them guidance. Her faith and conviction in Allah, SWT, was extraordinary. In the most trying of circumstances, when ordinary emotional women have to be held and comforted by their husbands, Khadija, R.A., kept offering encouragement and consolation to the Prophet, SAW. She reassured him time and again that Allah, SWT, would never let his righteousness and sincerity go in vain. After the declaration of prophethood, the situation turned difficult for the Prophet, SAW, and his household. Khadija, R.A., suffered from these trials and hardships till the end of her life. The war victories, prosperity, and people turning to Islam in droves, she witnessed none of this while she was alive. Still, she remained remarkably positive and hopeful that the truth would at last prevail. Never once did she complain to Allah regarding the delay in the acceptance of her supplications, nor did she show impatience to the Prophet, SAW, through her attitude. She remained steadfast through the demise of her sons, the divorce of her daughters, and the scarcity of resources, especially towards the later years. Khadija, R.A., always prioritized her faith over worldly life. In this matter, no bias came her way, unlike Abu Talib, who could not disentangle himself from the religion of his forefathers. In contrast to the wives of Nuh, A.S., and Lut, A.S., who sided with the misled people of their communities instead of believing the message of Allah, SWT, Khadija, R.A., rose above all these pressures and clung to the truth with complete devotion. This determination made her a genuinely upright and focused Hanif Muslim. Being focused in the way of the truth is a quality which is very dear to Allah, SWT. One of the reasons why he is also called Prophet Ibrahim, A.S., a focused Muslim in the Quran. Khadija, R.A., too, was a traveler of this path, and she was ready to sacrifice her status, wealth, children, and life during this trying journey. Another aspect of Khadija's life sets an example for Muslim women, that if their husbands are busy in performing an important task for the Muslim Ummah, or are genuinely talented and determined to pursue higher objectives, then they should support and assist their husbands instead of coming in their way. In such cases, the wives should be willing to sacrifice some of the time and attention they deserve from their husbands for themselves and their children. In addition, they can provide active support to their husbands, as Khadija, R.A., did, in order to participate in the good cause. During her marital life, we see that Khadija, R.A., got to experience all kinds of circumstances. The Prophet, SAW, would often seek isolation in the cave of Hira for meditation, whilst at other times he would go and preach in the markets of Makkah. After his prophethood, he would not get the time to trade and earn. Instead, the savings would all go into helping the poor. All this while, Khadija, R.A., never once complained of their financial situation. Neither did she nag her husband regarding the lack of family time, nor worry him regarding the future of their daughters. Instead, she was herself at the forefront, encouraging and assisting the Prophet, SAW, every step of the way. The biographers of the Prophet's life have a consensus over the opinion that Khadija, R.A., had completely assuaged and satisfied the Prophet, SAW, regarding the household matters, so that he could focus all his attention to carrying out the work of Allah. Another beautiful aspect of Khadija's personality was that along with being a successful businesswoman, she was also an exemplary housewife. Moreover, she was totally obedient to her husband despite being older to him in age and wealthier financially. Instead of taking pride in her intellectual abilities and status amongst the Quraysh, her attention always centered on the laudable attributes of the Prophet, SAW. Khadija's personality as a wife comes forth as one who was holistically sacrificing for the sake of her husband. She was always appreciative of her husband's qualities and ready to provide support whenever needed. Khadija, R.A., was so well aware of her husband's temperament that we do not find a single incident worthy of consideration pertaining to a fight between them in their 25 years of married life. It should be noted that Khadija, R.A., bore 6 children after the age of 40. Having to deal with the tremendous responsibility of raising children alongside the tribulations that prophethood brought with itself, it is normal to expect that one would become irritable in nature. Yet we see that Khadija, R.A., was particularly blessed in that she was saved from negative thoughts and attitude. Some light should also be shed on the maternal aspect of Khadija's life. Along with the 6 children that she had with Muhammad, Asa, she had 2 from her previous marriages. She was extremely fortunate that Allah showed all her children the true path. Her youngest daughter, Fatima, R.A., was named the leader of the women of Jannah by the Prophet, Asa himself. Undoubtedly, Khadija, R.A., gave them an outstanding upbringing. The children from her previous marriages also accepted Islam, and their state in Islam was also truly admirable. We thus find that Khadija's personality is so holistically complete that it offers an amazing example for all Muslim women to come. Her search for worthy qualities when choosing a husband, the righteousness of her character, the courage and steadfastness in faith when faced with hardships, her loyalty as a wife, her exemplary character as a mother, all are commendable traits of her personality. Her intellect, composure, wisdom, sensibility, generosity, kind nature, and ability to recognize the shallowness of the seemingly glamorous aspects of life. The list is endless, and one cannot decide which aspect is more commendable than the other. Undoubtedly, in the life and personality of Khadija, R.A., we find a complete and ideal Muslim woman worthy of emulation. This is the reason why Allah, SWT, sent his blessings upon Khadija, R.A., and his beloved servant Muhammad and Sa, valued and loved her with all his heart. In reality, Khadija, R.A., has done a magnanimous favor to the entire Muslim Ummah. Not only did she play a vital role in the work of advancing Islam alongside her husband, she also left an extraordinary example for us through her life. In particular, for Muslim women for all times to come, she serves as a lighthouse to guide them in their roles and achieve success in this world and next. The author of A View of Islam writes, and how correct he is. Khadija was endowed with such qualities that, leave aside non-Muslims, even Muslims cannot fully appreciate them. This lady possessed a brave heart, had nerves of steel, was high-spirited, and had forbearing nature and a staid composure. She played a critical role in the success of the Prophet's mission and advancing the cause of Islam throughout the Arab world. The grand task she carried out was one that would have not been possible even for a man of courage. The feminine world can never again produce such a wise and high-caliber woman.